Hey, everybody, this is Rob Belden, the Book of Mormon evidence guy. And I got with me today a very special friend, and actually my publisher, and we've been friends for a very long time. But we've had so many people, Boyd title, by the way, and then so many people who have asked. We're here right now in Washington, D.C. Tonight, we're going to be going to the residence of the ambassador of Tunisia for a big event for the Phoenician expedition. And you've probably seen some of our videos on the Phoenicia so far. But a lot of people have asked, what's it really like to, the daily grind on a 600 BC replica ship? And I thought, who better to actually ask that than somebody who's actually been on the ship? So, Boyd, would you tell us a little bit more about what part of which voyage and what part, and just kind of tell us about life on the Phoenicia ship?
In April of 2019, when you invited Philip Beale and Yuri Sonata to come to the Firm Foundation conference, in that time, they came and they showed a video of what they were planning to do in September of 2019. And that video, that little 2-minute video that I watched, just had a huge impact on me. I think it impacted everybody, but me in particular,
really impacted you.
I felt myself, because there are scenes of that thing going up over those waves. I was on the ship. I just felt somehow I'm going to be there. And I didn't know what was going to happen.
Smell the sea.
I get the sea spraying in my face. But no, and so I had that profound experience. And then shortly after that, through a series of remarkable coincidences, I guess you could say, I ended up with the opportunity to visit with Philip. And he just flat out asked me if I would be willing to be a crew member on the ship, and something in my side me jumped for joy and said yes. And then I had to tell my wife. But no, she was very supportive, actually. And so that was what the genesis of this was. And now this is his second voyage, his second expedition on the same ship. He did the earlier one in 2008 through 11, circumnavigated Africa. And this one, his intent was to start in the Mediterranean and sail it to America.
Okay. Why did he do that?
Well, he had the idea that if the Phoenicians were capable of circumnavigating Africa for 20,000 plus miles, that's far greater than the distance to go from the old world to the new world, right? In a straight line, it was actually much longer to do that voyage. So he felt that this ship was clearly capable of making the journey. And so he had to do it just to prove that it could be done.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the thing that got me going. Now, once I knew I was committed to go, then it was a question of how to make this happen. And there were a lot of preparations and things that went into that.
Yeah.
But I think the more interesting part is what happens when we actually get on board. And that's what I want to talk about. So
Absolutely.
I was able to be a part of the expedition at the very beginning. So we gathered in Carthage, Tunisia, which is a beautiful city. Whoever hears of or studies Tunisia, right? I mean, it's honestly, I didn't know where Tunisia was.
Yeah.
If you'd have asked me, it would have been somewhere in Africa. But that's So if you picture the African map, you can see right here on this map, it's that northernmost country that's right below Italy, and just across the Mediterranean to the south. And in Carthage was one of the major city-states of the Phoenician Empire. And therefore, Philip wanted to start from there because this was a Phoenician ship, and so he's going to start from the major cities.
So then they have a big port there. I mean, it's not just the city-state, but it's a huge
the ancient city. Yeah, I mean, as you can see in this picture, I'll show you here, the ancient Carthaginians built what was called the Punic Harbor. And this is probably, even by today's standards, one of the most advanced military ready ports ever built in the history of the world, because they were able to bring in under this pavilion that you can see in this image, they could store 200 ships in this center island. And at a moment's notice, they could launch those ships down these ramps that you can still see. Some of them are still extant to this day. We were there looking at them. These ramps were sloped down. They go into the water off this island. They could launch 200 triremes or biremes or triremes, which are these multi-level oared seagull vessels.
Are they warships?
These are warships, right? So this was, they were an amazing, and they had an armada of ships that they could launch and go out through this portal here and into the port. And within a half an hour, they could have these ships deployed. I mean, it's incredible. We can't do that anywhere near like that in our current military. So they had amazing abilities that we were able to see there and witness and realize we never heard of this. I never studied any of this, and so I was so blown away by this concept came to me over and over. And ancient does not equal primitive. We have this mistaken mindset. Well, if it happened 1,000 years ago, it was old. If it happened 2,000 years ago, it was even more old and more primitive, right? Well, that's not
It's just like people taking rocks and whacking them together, making fire.
What we're taught in the prevailing narrative, there were amazing advanced civilizations, thousands of years ago that were doing incredible things, and the Phoenicians were one of those that have kind of been lost from history. But anyway, so part of the time we spent over a week there in Carthage, traveling around and being led by some of the foremost experts in their history and the culture and all that.
How open is Tunisia to travel from outsiders?
Very open. I was surprised. And they're very big in tourism from Europe. So they get lots of Italians and French and Brits that come in there, but Americans, they don't cater to Americans at all, and they would like to. That's what they say. Yeah. I'd love to see more Americans because Americans don't know anything about it. Tunisia has, among its claims, the third largest Colosseum, Roman Colosseum in the world. It's in a city called El Jem. I've got some pictures of it here. Unbelievable and depressing at the same time, because as you see this incredible 30,000 seat, still functional, if they used it, amphitheater or Colosseum, they used it primarily to put first century Christians and feed them to the boars and the bears and the lions. So it's a pretty depressing thought. And we even visited these catacombs you can see in this image here, where the Christians would go to hide. And we were able to go down in these catacombs and actually we found traces of actual human bones laying around, sitting there on the shelves. I mean, it's so much of their country. They've not excavated anything. It's like you've got just ruins everywhere. And in one place, it was quite kind of telling in a way of how they treat it, because we were driving through this neighborhood and there was clearly old stacked bricks and stones, that were from thousands of years ago. The little kids are out there playing with their trucks and, just pushing things over. And it's like, anywhere else that would be like a
underneath the glass.
Yeah, guarded side. So there's just so much history there. They really are tripping over it all the time. And so you can see it in some of these images. But so that really was the introduction to me to this whole Phoenician civilization that the world has been made unaware of. I mean, because, and the reason for that is not hard to understand, because they were conquered in 146 BC. The Romans did conquer them in the Punic Wars. It's 100 years of just bloody, awful wars. They were finally conquered in 146 BC at the sacking of Carthage, and that's a well-documented.
That's history. Where's the library and all
destroying so much of incredible histories that were destroyed in their libraries of the Romans. And that's what happens, is the conquerors come in and they just destroy every trace of previous civilization. But at the same time, they adopt and borrow and claim ownership of all of the technology and culture that their predecessors had, that they conquered. And that was the case here. And so that's why we haven't learned about them in our studies and everything for the most part. But when I get to Carthage, we went to this beautiful marina, and at the marina, I saw for the first time this image that I took of, the Phoenicia. There she was, parked, moored along the side in calm waters. And no one was there. I just showed up on a taxi and got out and started walking around, and there was this incredible ship. And I walked around, went inside, looked at the galley, looked at the, sleeping quarters and everything. I thought, whoa, this is going to be my home. So
just to give people an idea about what kind of size it is, how big is the ship?
The ship is 60 feet long, about 20 feet wide, and it's called the beam, and then the length. And it has a below deck area in the front, where the bow, which is where the crew goes to sleep. And so we sleep in hammocks, right? Some guys actually prefer to sleep on the floor, on a pad or whatever. I like the hammocks. It worked fine. You kind of just get rocked to sleep until it gets really crazy sometimes. But so the way life goes is is we got there. We have tremendous support from the people there in Carthage. They have their own community. They're kind of a club or a cultural group that is called the Club Didon, which celebrates, Didon, who was uh, the princess who founded Carthage in I don't remember the date, so I'm not gonna say it. Go right there on the screen. It was well before 600 BC. Well, it was around 600
It's
BC.
right around that because that's right around the time of the sacking of Jerusalem.
Yeah,
by
I
the
think there
Babylonians.
may be some connection with the movement of peoples and things because of the Babylonian conquest, but that's something that needs to be explored. They founded the city, and then these people are still very much, and they're so excited that we would be there. Of course, Philip and his whole expedition that's leaving from there they were really honored by that, and they came and supported us, and were just every night they would come and have a barbecue, or they would bring food for us, and all kinds of things. And as you can see in this picture here, when they sent us off, they made sure that Philip Beale got dressed up in a Phoenician king, in a king costume, and so he good-natured soul that he is, he got on the bow of the ship and pointed west, and so that was the departure day, and it was very festive. To
go west,
yes. And so,
just out of curiosity, so I know your wife and family and so forth. So when did they think about this whole adventure, just before you actually embark on it?
well, they were all supportive. They were I was pleased at how supportive they were, and in fact, my wife and three of my daughters, did I say this right, or was it four?
But Holly didn't want to come with you, though.
No, she wasn't ready to be. She was happy to send me off.
Okay.
And she did. She actually came to Tunisia with my daughters.
Okay, yeah.
And so while we were there, they spent a few days. So she was able to see the ship and meet the crew and meet Philip and do all that. So that was
Make sure it's all safe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's no liability, no risk. Well,
no, none. Believe me, I signed a lot of forms, Philip made sure. But no, there was risk associated. We all knew that going in, and there is no relief boat that sails along with you. You are on your own on the ship, and that's
really like it was.
Yeah. I mean, and so, as we left, like so here, September 28th, 2019, we put out to sea, and it takes a while just to get out into the main channel, and hours actually to get to the main channel up into you get around the point of the Carthaginian peninsula there. And once you get into the main channel of the Mediterranean, though, what a joy. This is one of the most amazing experiences when those westerlies came and just filled that sail, and it was, moving us along at 5 knots, and the boat was just moving so smoothly, cutting through the water. It reminded me of that moment when I had seen that video back in April of that year. And then I talked to Yuri Sonata, who had been on the previous expedition, and his description of me, he said, Boyd, if you go on this expedition, there will be times where you will be on the boat and you will feel like you could have been there 2,000 years ago. Yeah. It will all come back to you. And I remember that in a few times, especially at night, when all you see is the stars overhead and you hear the splashing of the water and you feel the wind. It's an amazing feeling because literally you are reenacting what was done 2,600 years ago.
Literally would have been like you being a Mulekite fleeing from the Levant area and potentially going to Yerba, which we've talked about, and so forth. And
Jerba.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think I said that there was an article that came out in LDS Living about my intention on going on this trip, and it described some of the things that I had said. And one of the things I said was, it's one thing to sit behind a computer and pontificate or imagine what it would be like, but I felt like I needed to actually get my feet wet, get into the experience to really know what was possible and if this could be achievable. And that was my goal, is to kind of see if Mulek's voyage could in fact be reenacted.
So as you thought about this and wrote articles prior to going about actually living the experience versus reading about it or hearing about it or imagining it, what are some of the takeaways that you got from that?
Well, I guess the things that I learned, it caused me to study, right? To learn more about what do we know about Mulek? What do we know about the ancient Phoenician? What do we know? And do these things actually all come together at the right time for this thing to have taken place? That a ship can sail across the Atlantic, we know from Columbus, right? So that's not a breakthrough. But were the things in place in 600 BC to make that happen is the real question that I wanted to see answered. And I guess the takeaway after the fact is, wow, even beyond my expectations, everything was met. All the criteria are met. And since the time, that happened, we ended in, 2020. Since that time until today, so many more things have come to light. More and more information is coming out, it seems, all the time that are reinforcing the conclusions that were initially sought in this.
Well, so what I'd like to do, so to take us on kind of a little journey as to what goes on an average day on a Phoenician ship.
Okay. Well,
How many crew members and
Yeah.
what do you do? What are some of your jobs? What are the most mundane things and kind of more exciting things?
yeah.
Just kind of a little review of your daily activities.
Well, this chart that you're looking at right here is probably the best way to describe a day in the life. All right. And so there are basically anywhere from 10 to 12 crewmen at any time. And it's important to have that number because you're only half of you are actually functioning at any given time. The other half of the time, so there's two shifts, right? 2 6-hour shifts is what you have. So every 6 hours you're on duty and then you're off duty for 6 hours. On duty for 6 hours, off duty for 6 hours. So because the other teams, because this ship, obviously, does not have any automation, doesn't have the ability to put it on autopilot. Everyone can't go to sleep at the same time. Someone's always got to be on the helm steering. Someone's got to be on lookout. Somebody's got to be, making sure that everything else is operational while you're sailing. So it's a full-time job for at least 3 people at any given time.
How much actual physical work would you say on a scale from 1 to 10? 10 being
4 or 5. It's not a lot of physical labor involved in sailing a ship. There are times where there's extreme labor involved.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that. There's a single episode I can go into on that. But on an average day, you're basically running for these 6 hours. So if you look at these responsibilities here, 6-hour shifts in the government. So I was on the A team, and there was 6 of us on this, and so we had the helm. Now, when you're at the helm, that's for a 1-hour shift. Every one of these 1-hour tasks are 1-hour tasks. So you're at the helm, you're literally steering, holding the rudder, looking at the compass, and keeping it on course.
How does that work? I mean, can you actually change the course very much with whoever you have? Does it take a long time for it to?
It's fairly responsive, and you actually have 270 is the degrees that equals west on the compass. So you're generally always within 10 to 15 degrees of 270 on both sides, maybe 7 degrees on each side of 270. And that varies because sometimes the wind is pushing more from the south. And so you're fighting a little bit to keep it, pointing to the port side. And then at times the wind's shifting and pushing you this way. So you're fighting a little bit too. So the actual path of the ship is, something like this, just depending on which path it's passing for. But the general wind is always pretty strongly pushing you west. So you don't have to fight that. So you'll be an hour at the helm. And then check basically there was about 10 or 15 checkpoints that we'd go around and make sure that there's one place there's a leaky spot down underneath in the hull. We want to make sure that's not leaking anymore as the normal. There's also,
and if it is leaking, what do you do?
Well, we actually had occasions where
they have to.
No, there's
a bilge pump.
Actually a manual bilge pump, and that was part of this check option. You go around and you would manually pump this bilge, and because every ship takes on water just by design. Or it's inevitable.
Water's been done. You got to get that. Yeah.
Water is going to enter, and so it does. So there's always probably a foot of water in the bottom. But that's That's below the hull. So you have your upper deck, your below deck, and then you have the hull down here. And the hull underneath is filled with all of the ballast, right? There's
Steel
little
plates.
20 tons of ballast down there. Anciently, it would have been rocks and stones to weight it down. In Philip's ship, they used the equal amount of metal plates to fill that space to equal the 20 tons. So it's amazing. To make the ship more stable, you add more weight.
Yeah.
Right.
But
You don't
then
want to take the weight out because that keeps it upright. You know, that weight in the bottom is what keeps that ship from flipping over. So part of it is you're pumping out the bilge. You're checking all the ropes, making sure there's no excessive wear on them at different places, and you know, the brailing lines and the rudder and different things as you go around. So that's the check function. Look out. Literally, you put your seat, place yourself up on the bow of the ship, and your job is to look out. Now, what are we looking out for? Dolphins?
A big ocean out there.
Yeah. So actually, we do see a lot of dolphins, and that was fun. That was a lot of fun to see those out jumping, and they loved the ship. They would come to it. We had a whole pond of pilot whales that decided that the ship was something they wanted to check out. We must have had 20 of them. There was like this whole herd of cattle that came over and checked out. And then, you know, a number of us jumped in the water and swam around with them and stuff. They wouldn't come to us. Like, you couldn't swim with them. They would go away. But kind of like, I think it was cows. They seemed similarly willing to be close, but not that close.
Yeah.
And we also had many dolphin sightings where they would come. When we were really moving on at a good clip, the dolphins would come and they would swim with us. You know,
Feel like hovering.
and they come out of the water and do all kinds of tricks and stuff. So, but as lookout, you're not watching for those things. They're fun to see. But what you're looking out for is other ships. Yeah. Because that's the single biggest danger to a little ship like ours is a big, massive container ship moving at 20 knots that's coming across our path. And when you see that, and where you really need it is at nighttime, right? Because you can't see a ship at night, but they do have lights, and they have red and green on either side, and that tells you where you can tell whether they're coming at you or going away, depending on which side the red and green's on. So there's a lot of ways we learned how to rig that and to try to study those patterns. So that's look at cooking. Yeah, we do have to cook and eat. You know, there's
Every 6 hours.
There's no McDonald's on board, and so
What was the food?
Well, the food was all Tunisian supplied as we left there, so I could read the cans. I didn't know what. Unless I had a picture on it.
A picture?
Yeah, I didn't know what.
These are peas.
But you know, we had rice, we had pasta, we had beans, we did have eggs, so you could fry eggs. There was a fair amount of fresh fruit that lasted for a while. We had potatoes, and a lot of canned goods. Really, is what we were.
But you do any fishing while you're out there?
We did fish, and we did catch deerman, who is the Indonesian that Philip talks about frequently, and he's our boatwright, an amazingly skilled, gifted, can fix anything. I mean, anything breaks, he knows how to fix it somehow with just baling wire and twine, rope, and what he would fix it. And things do break, you know. That when you got the forces like that of the ocean working on this 50-ton ship, things are constantly under stress. Right? Yeah, and he's able to just fix it. He's amazing. But so cooking is something, and you might get a meal half prepared, and then your shift changes, right? So someone else comes and picks up what you were doing, kind of finishes it off and dishes it out, and so what we're doing is we're cooking for the other crew who's going to be coming on, right? And so we're cooking for them, and then cleaning after the cooking, right? Then there's cleaning, and then fill in is just an open one for because we only have 5 tasks really. So and as you can see here, those just shifted throughout the night. So this is our 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. Shift right there. So at 2 a.m., you know, you're tired, you go to bed, and you go 6 hours, and then you're up again at 6 hours later. So at 8 a.m.
So you're not doing like a regular.
No. And so it's constantly shifting, and you're always feeling sleep deprived because you're only getting at the most 4 or 5 hours sleep at a time, right? Because also when you're off, then if it's during the day and you're off shift, what are you doing? You're washing your clothes. So how do you wash clothes? Well, you throw the bucket over the side, You pull it out with seawater, pour it in a pan, and you put your clothes in there, and you put some laundry soap in there, and you wash your clothes. Like this picture here, you're gonna be washing your clothes in in seawater, and
The part of the
and
cleaning
you
chore.
shower in seawater. You do everything. So the only thing you do with fresh water is drink it.
Yeah.
Drink it and for cooking. And everything else is seawater, and you just realize that seawater is not good to taste. It works great for cleaning clothes and you're washing it, and there's at least a little bit of a salty residue, but
Yeah.
not everybody.
Well, there are people who probably also wonder about personal hygiene, that kind of stuff. I mean, how do you what's the potty facilities like?
Well, I think this picture describes it better than I could. But this was especially built, and I think Philip saw to it that was definitely provided there. And so yeah, that was our
So describe it a little bit, Phil.
well, you
How
got
does it work?
it's open air, right?
Yes.
It does have a little bit of a
Privacy.
wall around it. It comes up to about here, and yeah, that's where
Where
you
you're
go.
kind of like hanging over the edge, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's just hanging out over the edge,
Platform.
and it's a little platform with a nice little toilet seat on it, and yeah, you just go there. And so, the nature's sewer system handles everything.
yes.
But it was very functional. It worked fine, so that's what we used. And
So were there any men and women on the crew?
yeah, and on my lake we had two women at different times, one and one, and they were very able to deal with it. And
Yes.
and I think in this crew, I think there was a sense of respect. Whenever the limit came up and we're headed that way, everybody would just kind of go below deck or go into the galley and stuff, and they just get their privacy and stuff.
Yeah.
It was never really a problem. And so, but that was managed very well, and that worked out fine. And yeah, so that was a day in the life. And so you're kind of constantly somewhat sleep deprived. So it's a lot of times when you're off, you're also sleeping on deck, or you're, sleeping in your hammock, even when it's midday, right? Because you don't sleep
So
much.
tell us a little bit about the sleeping quarters then, as far as
So you're down like this picture here. You can see there's
there's no lights or anything. I'm assuming it's just dark.
yeah, there's light that comes in through the galley hole up the front, and then there's two entrances to it, one at the bow and one right near the galley. And so there's light that comes in there, but during the day, of course. And then at night, you have to use a flashlight to see in there. And it all works great until it rains.
What happens when it rains?
When it rains, the deck above us is not waterproof, or it doesn't shed water. And so the rain just comes right on through. So I quickly figured out why several of the hammocks had these plastic sheets hanging over them. I go, what's that for? What's that? Well, it's because when the rain came, I found out quickly, you got to have that plastic tarp kind of over your individual little hammock, so that kept the water off it. But yeah, it gets musty and wet down in there. You just kind of, but you know what? If you're sleep deprived and you can sleep anywhere. I mean, a lot of times just sleeping on a coiled up rope on the deck was a very comfortable place.
Really?
Yeah, I've got a little clip here I can show you that shows us we're sailing. This has been a really rough night the night before, and I'm literally laying on my back on deck because it's hard to stand on the deck because the ship is constantly moving and constantly kind of jolting every time it hits a harder wave or something like that. So you're having to balance yourself all the time. It's easier to be sitting or laying down, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I was taking this video from, and you can see it here, and I'll play it here, and you can see how this was just an average, 5 minutes out of 24 hours of just going with the wind. And it's a pretty amazing thing.
Wow. All right, so I know you had a couple of experiences, and I'm going to see if you bring one of them up because Philip Beal told me specifically to ask you about that one.
Okay.
But so some experiences that. So you mostly calm water. And how many days were you gone?
So I was on the ship for 3 weeks altogether.
Okay, so about 15, about 20 days, something like that.
Yeah, maybe 18 days.
20 days or so. And out of that, how much of that was fairly calm, smooth water?
I would say 16 of the days.
So there was 8 couple of days.
It was well, it was like the fourth day in. We were
Yeah.
just north of Algeria.
Did you get seasick at all?
Algiers. No, I never had any seasickness, and I'd be troubled if I don't get seasick. And so we were sailing west as we were going, and I started to notice a definite change in the scene ahead. And I asked Philip about it. I said, "Doc, looks a little troublesome." And it was darkening clouds, really coming down and getting thicker and darker. And then pretty soon, lightning was striking. I had some pictures here. And I started saying to myself, that's something I hadn't thought of. Do ships ever get struck by lightning? I thought it's kind of a question.
I know airplanes do.
Yeah. So
it doesn't just hit the ocean, but into the.
I thought, what?
Well, you got a mast sticking up.
Yeah, I
That's
got
gotta
a
be
15-meter mast
lightning
sticking
rod
out there. That's probably not good. But we really have a lot of time to think about it and process it because it came on us pretty fast. And so I don't know if you remember that scene from the Voyage of the Dawn Treader where they're sailing into the jaws of that black cloud. That's kind of what it was like, only with a lot of wind, a lot of waves. And as we're moving into that, Philip, of course, is now having one of his more urgent, all hands on deck conversations.
Yeah.
Okay. He's pretty laid back, but he wasn't laid back at this point. And it was about
the barge orders.
And so we were all very much at his command, and he had talked about it with Steiner, who was the skipper, the assistant skipper on board, and they concluded that they could see we're getting adverse winds, and they were going to be coming at us from the east, so we were going to get hit right into. We're heading west, but we're going to hit eastern winds.
Getting hit with these three winds.
Okay, so yeah, we're moving into this storm, and it was getting pretty bad. And long story short, you got to a place where it was my turn to go to the helm, and we were all down in the galley, and we were hunkered down, and we had all our rain gear on, and we had our life jackets on.
It wasn't raining yet. You were still.
No, it was raining. So we had gotten into the storm, and it was raining, and it was pushing us backwards, and we deployed the what's called the sea anchor, which is literally just a sail, a storm sail connected to the anchor chain. And you throw the sail out over the bow of the front of the ship because the ship's being blown backwards.
Yeah.
Right. And so this literally acts as an anchor. So it's like a parachute underwater,
Pulls.
and it pulls the front end back into the wind so that you don't get crossways with the wind and the waves. So this parachute is pulling in the front.
Smart.
Yeah, it's a brilliant design.
Yeah.
And whether the Phoenicians knew about it, we don't know, but I'm sure they did because it's pretty obvious. This is the only way you're going to survive these kind of situations. But anyway, it was really rough, but you still have to guide, the ship and be at the helm. And so
Even though you're getting
we were being driven backwards. Yeah. But the water's moving past you still. And so it's like you're going forward.
Yeah.
According to the water.
Yeah.
But so anyway, at the helm and,
So you're watching the compass. You're keeping the ship.
Yeah, but
As much as you can.
it was
there's
my
not much you can do.
Yeah, I'm down in the galley and I'm sicker than a dog. I mean, it's just that's where I really got ill. And I knew it was my time. And so I got up, cinched in all my water gear. I knew it was my time to go out to the helm and take over. And so I got out of the galley, which we had sealed up with all these planks. They didn't use doors. They used these sliding planks to make a door when it's raining and stuff. Yeah. So when I got out there, I walked out and I was ready to walk alongside the galley. And we have a safety rope that runs all along there. You just hold that rope as you go along because the ship's always moving. Well, in these crazy circumstances, I reached for the rope just as the ship got hit on the starboard side with a pretty strong wave. And my hand missed the rope. And I got hit by the railing of my left knee. So the ship was literally moving into me, and I found myself going overboard. And at this point, everything just went into slow motion because I had to visualize what was happening. And I realized that my center of gravity is too high and everything is sending me that way. And there's only, 6 feet down and then it's a swash. And so Steiner had made it very clear to us that there's only one thing you cannot do, and that's fall overboard during a storm. Because he says, if you fall over during a storm, we don't get an EPIRB out there. even if we do get an EPIRB, an EPIRB is an emergency position sensor, which you throw out if someone goes out, and that tracks where they are. He says, even with your little light that blinks on your self-inflating jacket, he says, you're moving away from us at 6 meters per second, right? Or maybe 2 meters per second. And he says, within a minute, you're 100 meters, you're 300 meters, 500 meters away within a few minutes. And there is no way we can turn the ship around. There's no way we can call it. And so you're lost at sea at that point.
You're basically.
And he said the chances are about 1 in 100 that you'd ever be rescued. Okay. He says pretty bad. So all that was going through my head. As I'm
Analyzing this as you're falling overboard.
and I'm saying to myself, I'm willing myself to lower my center of gravity before, I commit to the overboard function. And the amazing thing, I just will say it was a miracle, another wave hit strongly from the port side and literally pushed the ship under me this way. And where I would have landed in water, I came down right on the railing, tottered there for a minute, and then managed to roll onto the deck. So that was my moment of a little
Your
bit
light flashed before your eyes.
I did. And Philip wrote about it in his book at length, and there's a section in there you can read. But
that was the experience that you said to make sure he asks you about it. You don't say it. You don't voluntarily, say it.
Yeah. So the real things happen so fast that way. It's not until later when you're thinking about it that you realize how close you really came to having a major problem. And I envisioned, this is what the funny thing came to my mind was, how is my wife going to explain to our children what their daddy was doing?
What he died.
Yeah. And so, because I knew she supported
Pretty serious. This is, people think this is all, it's wonderful, it's an adventure, it's exciting and so forth, but there's a serious level of danger to this whole thing. Which
not without.
Which that as you consider, Lehi and Nephi, and especially when Nephi and they got into that big storm and so forth, and how terrified the families must have been, and how scared it must have been for Laban and Landell to the point that they actually finally decided that, oh my gosh, we are all going to die in this sea today if we don't let Nephi go. Yeah, so there's you've actually kind of experienced that.
I could actually relate to it because I think there was a lot of frivolity, from me and from the crew and from everybody up until that moment, because you just assume everything's going to be hunky-dory. There's never going to be a problem, right? And then when something like that happens, it really does sober you up and make you realize, we're always this close to the edge. Yeah. And so it was for me a real learning experience.
Do you any dancing?
No.
No big parties on the boat,
but I did think
party ship.
I didn't tell this. This was my Jonah and the whale
experience
episode, and I often refer to it that way because when I looked it up later, Jonah was in a Phoenician ship, and he was sailing.
Isn't that cool?
And he was sailing to a known Phoenician location, which is now modern day Cadiz, which is where I was. Yeah. So I mean, there was a lot of parallels there. But anyway, that was, and then the rest of there was lots of other things that happened, but that was probably the most dramatic one that's worth telling.
Wow. So and you ended up going that. When did you get out again? When did you disembark from the ship?
Yeah, I think it was mid-October, around the 20th or so, October.
Where?
Oh, and I got off. So we stopped in several places along the way. We stopped in Algiers to make repairs, and we stopped.
Tell us about that. It's really quick.
Well,
that was really
after that storm that I just described. We had concerns that the mast had gotten a crack in it, and so we felt strong. Philip felt strongly that we needed to attend to that. So we actually pulled into Algiers, spent 3 days.
They are not an open country.
No, they're not open at all. In fact, we were stranded on the port. They wouldn't let us in. Finally, we were able to persuade one of the port authorities to let us into the city. And so
kind of a scrape there, didn't you? It was close. I mean, they weren't going to let you in.
They got charged a lot of money to get out, and it was a crazy deal. A lot of bureaucracy and stuff. They were looking for. They thought we were smuggling people in or out or whatever. I don't know. It's a crazy time. But we stopped. We went from there, and then we ended up in Gibraltar, the Rock of Gibraltar. It's a real rock. It's an amazing thing. And we spent several days there and touring that area. It's very rich in Phoenician history as well.
Yeah. Well, so we got to wrap it up. Any final words? Would you do it again?
I would do it again. I would do it again. I would love to do.
Well, if you do, I want to go with you. If we can get that Captain Beal to do this
Captain
again.
Beal on board.
Yeah. So overall, your experience, that's amazing.
I'd just say it's been life changing. It's been really remarkable. I've learned a lot from it. So thanks.
Well, you're a very brave and courageous person, and really, kind of put your money where your mouth is. Basically, you've been involved with this whole thing, and to actually put your life and limb, up for stake, and time and energy and money to go over there and do all that. It's a volunteer thing, right? So we want to appreciate you. It's been awesome to have a little bit more insights into what it's like to be in a 600 BC replica ship crossing the Atlantic Ocean. And so we also want to remind everybody to make sure that right down here you can hit the subscribe button, okay? And we've got more awesome videos coming. We're so excited about it. Also, many people have been watching the channel, but only about half or so are actually going to hit the button. So if you would like to see this awesome content that we've got coming out, then you got to hit the button so that it'll tee up for you next time and you'll be able to see this. So we are excited about that. Thank you so much, Boyd and Tuttle, for coming, being share that information, but also thank you for your friendship over the years. We've done a lot of good things together, and it's been great. And been our publisher and a confidant and on the panel for a long time, and we appreciate all that. So everybody, thanks again for watching. We hope you're enjoying this. We're leaving you now from Washington D.C. because we have an event to go to. We're going to be going to the residence of the ambassador of Tunisia tonight. They have the Smithsonian is going to be there. We have church people are going to be there. We've got people and dignitaries from all different kinds of places, from Morocco and so forth, and we're going to be a part of that. So this is kind of a history-making thing, and I'm glad that you're here with me, brother, to do this together. Thank you so much, everybody. Till next time, see you later.